If you've joined us with our previous videos in the series Creating Simple Coasters, you would have seen how we created the simplest form of coaster, which is two fabrics stitched together. We've then finished with a decorative edge. We've used pinking shears to trim back the edges. So that's our simplest form of coaster. We can use that on surfaces that don't need to be protected from heat. So that's that. In our next video, we took that a stage further and we added some wadding to give protection. We can now use that under a hot cup of tea. So again, we used two decorative fabrics, a layer of wadding in between, top stitched around and trimmed back using pinking shears to give a decorative finish. Having learnt those skills, we've now moved on to this method of making coasters, where we've stitched on the wrong side, turned it through, and then with top stitching we've closed our turning gap, and we have coasters there with wadding in there, plain and simple, and now we can start experimenting with different patterns. So for this one, I'm going to use one of the basic quilting blocks. Start my fabric up. I've got 4 pieces of fabric that are 3 inches square. There we go. And we're going to form a 4 square block. We're going to be stitching these together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what we need to do is join the top 2 and the bottom 2. And stitch those together, press them open, stitch the top and bottom lines, and then press and trim. And then we're ready to use that to build up our coaster. So let's go and make our block. Okay, so I'm just going to check on which way my cats are looking, so that's that way. So I'm going to lay those on top of each other, stitch length of 2.5, and I'm using piece and foot, so I'm going to be stitching 1/4 inch in from the side. I've got my second block, again just make sure my heads are facing the same way. Line those up and stitch 1/4 inch in from the edge. Now separate those, I'm going to open them up. Now I have 2 lines of 2. I'm going to press those, and I'm going to press them so when I go to the iron, I'm going to press that, go in that way, so that my seam is going towards the dark side. And I'm going to do the same on that. So when you put them together, your seams are going to go different directions. So I'm going to press those and then back to sew those. There we are, so they're nice pressed, the seams are flat. I'm going to fold those right sides together. So here, see the seams are going in different directions, which means that you can lay them next to each other. Just lay that straight across there. I'm going to be joining these again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So just make sure that it stays flat. Straighten that up. we go, and I can open them up, and there I have my 4-patch block. So I'm just going to press that, and then we're going to get our other pieces ready to create our coaster. So before we start to layer it up, we want to make sure that our coaster is square. So we need it to be 5.5 inches square. There'll only be a tiny bit to trim off. So that's my centre point there. I'm going to just trim there, turn it round, line those edges up. Show me centres in the centre. Go. So that's going to form the front of our coaster. Got some fabric and just using one of these for the backing. That's again 5.5 inches square. So put that on the right sides together and then cover it with 5.5 inch square of wadding. So just make sure that's all lined up again. Going to stitch around with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, remembering to leave a gap for turning through. Okay, so I'm going to start with some reverse stitches. I'm using stitch length 3, and then I'm going to stitch all the way around. And I'm going to come off the edges in the corners. It just gives us a nice secure corner on our seams. Just when you go over the seams from here, just make sure they're flat. Threads to the back. And on the last corner, so I'm going to just go part way in and make sure I leave a gap for turning. Some reverse stitches. There we go. Take those off. And what I'm going to do is cut across the corners, making sure you don't cut into the intersection. Don't want your corners coming undone, but you just want to reduce the bulk so it makes it easier when we come to turn it through. There we go. And what I'm going to do here is just going to trim back the wadding, just doing an angled cut into the gap, just making sure you're not going to cut your fabric. Just going to cut that back till I get to the stitch side, and then I'm going to angle it away. There we go. And now this time you just want to be careful when you're pulling it through that you're not putting strain on the seams of your 4-patch. Just ease that through, turn it over. There we go. I'm going to be using my fingers just to ease the corners out. Get those squares, those corners nice and square. There we go. So just spend a bit of time just easing those corners out. There we go. When you're happy with them, just going to flatten those seams, going to fold that over, and to take that and we're going to press it ready for doing the top stitching. Now we want to top stitch as close as we can to that edge. I'm going to just start in. Got a couple of stitches backwards, forwards. Make sure that's folded under. When you get to the corner, make sure that your needle is down before you rotate it. And you may just need to let your machine just take it slowly, take up the bulk in the corners. And to go around all four sides, back to where we started, reverse stitch to secure, there we go, there we go, just trim off the edges, loose threads. And there you have your 4-patch coaster.